That is a problem with the store itself, feeding the data back to Instacart, not with Instacart's data.
Interesting. Okay.
I only know this because my partner used to run Instacart locally, so.
So they tried.
So she made the system. It works. It's all contingent upon the data coming back from the store, and if the store's data isn't refreshed, it doesn't work.
South Street Whole Foods is kind of small.
It depends on where. Yeah, it depends on where you live in the city. That where I live, they shop from the Cal Hill one, so it's usually more. They have bigger storeroom. They have everything works better. This place is intimidating. I don't like it. It's too big.
So,
Sorry.
got recording with me? No. I mean, supermarkets I'm interested in.
Relevant to parenting.
I mean, kind of.
Where do you find the energy bars?
Yeah, so basically I just called this Brainstorm to do just that, just to chat about specifically what resources we could have and don't for parents right now, or that you'd like to see, and we can kind of figure out what we can do. Also as I said, we can go as broad or as detailed as you guys like. So ranging from here's things I've noticed that make it tougher as a parent to come to events or to do things or whatever, or here's some broad sweeping ideas I've had about kids at Indy Hall or getting parents together or whatever else. Because the whole point is that Adam and I have no idea. It's a total blind spot, and it's just dang silly we haven't talked about it until now. So we're just here to listen.
All right, I have a few observations.
Yeah.
Events at night are tough. Obviously, this is a workspace, so it would be difficult to have non-evening events. But, my kids go to sort of a traditional school, so they're occupied traditional school hours. But between, say, 3 and 5 or 6, there's a window where were there an event to take place during that window, it might be a lot easier to bring them than, say, an art opening starting at 7.
Right.
Between 3 and 6?
Between 3 and 6, yeah. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking them out of school for an event like that, but an event between 3 and 6 might be much more, I'm trying to track down Fallon's signings, for example, because they like her work anyway, they know her work, and I think that would be really fun for them to see her in sort of a celebrity status.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was a lot of the events, and this I think is applicable also to adults, but a lot of the events here are, I won't say feature prominently, but alcohol is a big thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not so down with bringing my kids into a bar. I mean, I realize that I'm the primary culprit. I host cocktail nights, but I do that on a night when my kids aren't here. And we've stopped doing it, frankly, because it's Girl Scout nights too, and I don't want to have that coinciding with Girl Scout night. Just because, I think a lot of the parents whose kids are here are okay with it. I haven't heard any objections from you, Sarah. But I don't know that.
I drink in front of my kids all the time.
No, I do as well, my own kids, but I don't know what other parents do with their kids.
Yeah, I don't.
Wine
it's still a consideration.
Well, no, exactly. So I, for better or for worse, we stopped doing that because I don't want to be, hey, let's have cocktails and get boisterous over there while there are girls over here learning how to be good citizens.
But I do feel like that there's ways to do it that don't necessarily preclude movement not having alcohol.
I agree with you. So
art opening, for example, we could have a pre-art opening time where that stuff still all be set up, but we have the artist could maybe come a little bit earlier and walk the kids through the artwork or show the work in progress piece and talk about that and have that kind of be adults would enjoy that process as well, but then that's just a little addition to the event as opposed to changing the entire.
Right, and my point for bringing it up is not that. I mean, I'll be totally honest. Like, my kids will taste alcohol at home because I want them to understand like that's a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my son had a glass of like a sip of wine because I don't want it to be a taboo subject. So I'm not saying this out of a prudishness, but I'm also saying it out of the perspective of I want our guests here, be they 6 years old or 50 years old, to be comfortable. And I therefore, like, somebody comes to an art opening and wants to drink their face off, like, I don't want to dissuade that any more than I want my daughter to come to an event and enjoy herself in a way that she feels safe and comfortable as well.
Okay.
So, like, the variety of audiences that we bring into our space at least monthly, some consideration of that question. That's my only reason for bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, and personally, I've wanted balance for that because I don't really like to drink because I'm a super lightweight.
And that's fine.
Yeah, so it's like looking for more opportunities for things that don't involve alcohol as the sole component.
Which is why I brought up at the outset, like, this applies not only to children but also to adults who just choose not to drink or whose vice is something different.
Yeah.
Right? So. I hate to use the word vice. Sorry, I don't mean to be judgmental about it, and I'm specifically intending not to be judgmental about it with my comments, but even though it came out that way.
Just entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are my two primary observations.
Mm-hmm. I think when it comes to like smaller babies, knowing that they are welcome makes a huge difference because they tend to be more like, what we're talking about, like little brat. In terms of like making messes and stuff like that. So there's always this period of time between when my kids were, even though we were unschooling and everything, when my kids are like up to 6 months, maybe 9 months before they got mobile, I felt super comfortable going to the meetup with them wrapped. If they needed to eat or anything, I would nurse them there, or if they were fussy, I'd take them outside. Like, there was a strategy. Once they start crawling, it's like all hell breaks loose. So, but at the same time, you then end up very isolated as a parent. So the groups that it was possible for me to bring my toddler, and I knew that there were people who were aware that I might bring my toddler, were comfortable with that, were willing to chase my toddler down on occasion or play with them because they're way more interesting to my toddler than I am. Like, that kind of thing, having that kind of explicitly be known was super helpful in helping me not feel so isolated. Because once you get isolated, then like depression and all these other things can kind of multiply. And I think that freelancers are more susceptible to that as parents because paying for daycare when your freelance is up and down is not something that you necessarily get to do. So your free time is much more restricted. And yeah, so I think as a community, one way we can support parents during that season is just being like, oh, your toddlers are welcome. And then having like 2 or 3 people that know ahead of time that they're comfortable with kind of just being part of the village. It's not like you have to hire anyone.
I've experienced that. Like, I brought, when my kids were younger, I brought them here to the hall. It was the old space, but that's irrelevant. And Kate, for example, was like unbelievably helpful. Like, she was like, I want to play with your kids.
Yeah.
And I could just go focus on like banging out a couple of projects, knowing that someone was there, making sure they're not going to stick their fingers in a light socket, making sure they're not going to like walk out the back door and on the trap, just being there.
It doesn't even have to be where someone's going to watch them, but just knowing that we as a community are
down with
that, and not just like, well, what if they, or if there's areas where people are not open to that, like, can you not have them in the desk spaces? And that's just part of the beginning of the conversation. So there's no like, those parents, they let them run all over the sidewalk, what are they going to do near my desk? Like, if that's a concern, let's just have the conversation and solve the problem.
Right.
And instead of kind of both silently sitting there like.
I mean, we've had that discussion about dogs. Why can't we do it about?
Just reminded me about that.
Yeah.
Sounds like the same issue.
And
Right?
I think that's the trick is communication and making sure that whatever, like, both expectations are set of like, okay, this is definitely like, clearly this is a better area for kids to be in, like this more open space than like where there are desks and lots of extension cords to trip over. But also being able to figure out an effective way to communicate, like, hey, I'm bringing my kids in. They'll be kept over here just so you know, like, talk to me if you have an issue, or I don't know, whatever.
Like if you have an interview,
Yeah, whatever sort of
let
calling
me
the ball you
know
need.
like that it would be bad to have a 6-year-old running around in the back.
Oh, but I'd love to conduct an interview with a kid sitting there.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
there are some people for whom like they're making a bet the company pitch, and it's like even the best behaved toddler might cause anxiety in that situation.
And I think in general, toddlers probably shouldn't be here during the day. There's going to be the occasion where like your daycare calls and says, come and grab your kid, and then you have to come back and get your stuff. Like that's different than like bringing the kid to go work in the afternoon.
Agreed.
But even then, like toddler is an age where I don't always know if they're welcome to like the beginning of the art opening event. And a lot of times I'm just like, well, if you want my child out of the way, then you should pay for state subsidized childcare. And that's one of the things that I'm always pushing with people. So part of me is like, yeah, sometimes I'll bring my toddler and be like, natural resource. You want the social security check, you might want to start paying out for the baby. But like at the same time, I don't want to like offend people or constantly be an aggravation. So
I think there's a balance to strike between like this being a workplace and this being a place that can help people from feeling isolated, like you talked about. You know, I think
that's a balance we
there's
strike every day.
yeah, and I think it's like when we can be more explicit about striking, so that communication is there of like, this is okay, or like this is okay on these particular days or these particular times, or you know, with this particular conceit. I don't know.
I also think, like, I remember having this discussion with Manya when she was here. Like, can she bring her baby to nurse somewhere? Like, that's never been explicitly stated. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, any place here is legally, like, I'm a huge, like, anywhere you can be in the city of Philadelphia, you can nurse.
Yeah.
I don't know that people know that, A, or would feel comfortable about that. And just like we had to have, like, the Tolo tampon box, maybe we can say something like, babies, toddlers, nursing moms, welcome.
Well, there's literally no place to nurse here that doesn't have a window.
Right.
Well, that's why we put curtains in the phone rooms, and that's why they have locks. is
Actually, explicitly because of
for pumping.
Okay.
But I don't know that it's ever been communicated to the membership that, hey, like, this is not only okay, but, like, we welcome you. Right.
I think on the other side of that, though, is pumping rooms usually also have a place to keep.
Like a fridge and
Yeah.
supplies.
Well, not even the fridge. The fridge, you could technically use the fridge here if you had to.
But like the little supplies and
But
stuff.
the supplies are like the stuff that you have to use to sanitize, hauling that stuff back and forth. I mean, I got a bag from IKEA that I used when I was occasionally at office space, but for the most part, it's really nice if you don't have to haul that stuff because it's expensive. And if you lose it or drop it, or as you're prone to do when you're sleep deprived, leave it on top of the car or something, you know, it's not. So having like a small place for supplies, like we do tampons, like in a closet, like knowing that that's even potentially an option, or maybe just making an exception for pumping moms to have a cubby without having to pay the fee.
Might be worth it.
The other thing that's difficult though is that as a woman, when there isn't an explicit like, oh, here's the documentation that we have on the options we have for you when you have a baby in our co-working space. When that's not explicit, it's hard. You can feel like you're going to be looked down on differently, right? Like you're not like, I don't mind nursing in front of meetups. I'm not always comfortable doing that in a co-working space because in my mind there's a differentiation between my kids in this space and what I do now.
Like one is an affinity group and one is just the people you work with?
To a degree, yeah.
Okay.
And even though I would make network connections at meetups, it was still in the evening. It was still kind of a more casual time versus my work time is often much more heads down because I'm paying hourly for childcare who have been filling stuff in school. Some of this suck it up. So there's a balance of that, but if the community doesn't explicitly state that, that even increases that kind of wall of like, well, what if this guy sees me pumping? Is he not going to take me seriously, either consciously or unconsciously?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not going to get the gig that I would have gotten otherwise? Do I have to like think about that? And that's one of the exchange, like we've talked about, like the whole tampon thing. Like when women are seen getting tampons out, they're often, femininity is not a rewarded thing in our culture as of yet. So explicitly stating it as a co-working space will help change the culture and make it easier for both men not to react unconsciously biased against women, because they'll say, oh no, this is just part of the space, and for women to feel more comfortable taking that space for themselves.
I have a question on that. Is it more comforting to have signage that is open and available and publicly viewed by every single member here, or is it more comfortable to have a scenario where Sam and I may notice someone who is pregnant or expecting or beginning a family here, and we would specifically say, like, we put a bunch of resources together here, and this is it. Here you go.
I think it should be publicly available. I think it should be, because it needs to be, everyone needs to be thinking about this. Whether you want to have kids or not, you're benefiting from other people having kids. It's not a diss of like, well, you shouldn't be thankful my children ran into you on the sidewalk at all. It's just the reality though. Like, water is something that we all feel responsible for taking care of because we're all using it, and it's a natural resource. Children are also a natural resource. If you want cheaper labor, newer labor when you have your own businesses, if you want your Social Security check paid, those are all coming from having newer people in the pipeline. Either immigration or having babies.
I mean, look at Japan. They're having a serious problem with that.
Europe is having, I mean, the Danes are paying for people to take vacations to have sex if they've had children.
Really?
Yep.
Because they're like, you have sex a lot when you have babies and then you're super stressed out. That's okay. We'll send you on a romantic vacation.
Go fuck and have kids.
Because you live longer. Wow.
Yeah. No,
I mean, that kind of leaves asexuals out of it, and there's a whole other
I mean,
whole
I think,
other LGBTQ thing.
So I think something that we can do super easily right off the bat is, we can put a label on one of the phone rooms as like pumping room or something like that.
Just do the nursing symbol.
Yeah.
What is that?
There's a national, I'll find it. There's a national nursing symbol. It's just like blue and white, and it's mom holding a
You
baby.
see it on a restroom.
what I want to avoid
never
is like
noticed.
othering parenthood, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't want to, like, oh, you're pregnant. Here's this that we prepared just for you other weird people who have
It
babies.
feels weird. That feels
Like,
weird.
No, and that's, I mean, look, I don't nurse. I have never nursed. But it was
You
always
should try it. It's great.
awesome. Thank you. But like, it was always weird when, I go somewhere with a kid and like oh, you're one of those people, right? I can hear.
Sorry.
No, but it must be even harder.
Sorry for my face.
No. I appreciate the input. Like, it must be even harder having the social disadvantages of being a woman and then being a parent, and then like everybody does all these assumptions about who you are, what you need, etc.
Well, it's just an extension of patriarchy. It's we no longer find you sexually attractive because we can't own you as an object. So let me boss you around about something related to that.
Right.
The number of times I see guys call it catcalling, and then I walk up and then they make comments about how many children I have. Wow, you have lots of children. I'm like, yes, I'm very fertile. Thank you. Thank you very much for noticing. Like, what? Like, why are you making all these comments about the number of children? And people don't think anything of it. They're just patterns we've learned. Like, I'm not trying to.
Catcalling. Like, people comment loudly about how many kids you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you might.
Adam, people comment about everything.
You must have lots of sex because you have so many kids.
Yeah.
You must be a pretty boring
And the
person.
comments I had when Neely's friend, because Neely and her friend were close to age, but he was a little smaller than her because she's a really tall kid, and he was biracial. So they would see Mary, and it would look like I had Neely and then Adrian and then Mary, and the comments people were like, "Oh, those all yours?" I'm like, "Yeah, they are. Come on, keep going. I know you wanted to."
There are a lot of kids near you.
There are a lot of children, yes. There are children
your
with
vicinity.
different skin colors in your vicinity.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. but yet it's ingrained in us. And so I feel like you have to kind of get ahead of it, not because people are evil, but because we're ingrained habits. We're ingrained to like look for that stuff and notice it or pay attention, or miss out parents or relatives do that, and we just kind of repeat it without thinking. So the only way to break biases is to actually state an opposite viewpoint to that bias in a very gentle, but this is who we are, kind of cultural changing way. This is the national question.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
And I think it's also important that it not be, that whatever messaging we put forward not be gendered. In other words, this is only information for the female parents, or this is only information for the male parents. Because I think we tend to, society, we look at, oh, that's women's work, taking care of a kid. And when a man does something to take care of a kid, oh my God, he's so amazing. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's our job as people to take care of our kids. It doesn't matter if we identify man, woman, whatever. I think it's important that it not be aimed at the female members of our community. It could be aimed at the community, whether you're a man or a woman. Like, taking care of your child is what you do as a person, not because you're a man, not because you're yourself.
Well, I think we should, just in general, just saying parents is a good choice.
Yes.
Or caregivers even. And then the other thing, because sometimes even like aunts and uncles are the ones that end up taking their kids sick days. I think it would be good to have some kind of sick day. It doesn't have to be a policy, but some kind of like, what happens if your kids are sick? Are you welcome to bring them and just co-work in the gallery for a couple of hours?
I've done that.
You know, and a lot of people do that, and I think that's great. But a lot of people that do that are also much closer to the community.
Right.
If you're someone sitting, you know, not in, like, that could be like, well, can I do that? My kid's school's right here. I just need to have that phone call. Like, there's complications to it. And so if there's ways to solve that complication as a community, that's going to make a huge difference in how connected that person feels.
So other than communication, what would be required to make that work?
Right.
Is there some kind, I mean, do we have any kind of like parental policy?
Presently, no.
We don't even technically have a dog policy, going back to that conversation.
But
We
we
have
had
like
that.
suggestions.
We had that whole Slack exchange at the old space.
And I understand
So
why.
for what it's worth,
I mean, he was right.
we've had a Basecamp exchange, HipChat exchange, Slack exchange. Like every platform we've ever had, we've had an exchange about parenting. There's no on the record anything.
Which I understand why, because you know, you want to be able to have exceptions to things and accommodate people, but you can explicitly state that. The other problem is, though, as a parent, a lot of times my first instinct, if my kid is sick or something is to go wrong, is to check handbooks.
Okay.
Because a lot of times if I'm remote and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to manage tomorrow because my kid has gotten sick in the middle of the night, or if I am just in general, trying to know ahead of time what it would be to do. It's really difficult to, in the short amount of time that I have to do work, kids, and everything else, to have to then go talk to 3 different people and get 3 different stories.
Yeah.
So having document, like, I understand why Indy Hall doesn't have documentation for everything, but in this case, I actually think having documentation would be very valuable. Because a lot of times it's also not comfortable. Being a parent can also be a disadvantage in work environments, and it's also not always comfortable to have these conversations.
I mean, I think there is utility in both having documentation, but also in having, maybe it's, you know, we've had other things, like we've had designated people that you can go talk to if you have questions about a specific issue. So maybe we have, remember we had the notion of like the exit row seating where that person makes themselves available to answer questions. Like I could see us designating 3, 4, 5 people who are parents that if there are new parents who join the community, make themselves available to discuss, hey, what's it like to be a parent at Indy Hall? Even if it's just somebody to talk to about it. I mean, that's that parent don't understand. Slack channel is kind of like that, but maybe you want something more personal. Like sit down, like, hey, what's it like? I have a newborn. I haven't slept in 3 days. how can I be productive in this environment under those circumstances?
Well, especially from a freelance perspective, because I've found as a parent, being a freelancer, doing unschooling, being a woman, like all three of those things put me in categories that a lot of parenting groups just simply have skills. And it's not intentional. It's just, it's a newer industry. And yeah.
Amy, would the folks at this table be up for being those people to start with?
Sure.
I'm willing to do that.
Because that's definitely on the lines of what I was hoping for, is something that feels more like a resource. Because my first thought is like, wow, a ton of people are suddenly having babies. But also just like, wow, we have the Girl Scouts and like they're here and that's awesome. How do we do more things that are resources for parents as well as resources for kids and resources for families as a whole?
And it's tricky.
That
but
would
I
be
think
pretty cool.
when you guys who run the operations day to day aren't yourselves parents, you may not.
Oh, we have no dang idea.
Right. And that's not a criticism. It's just merely your experience, right? So being able to turn to someone like Sarah and just say, hey, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm curious about the handbook. You mentioned that it's helpful to consult the handbook when you're like, all right, kid's sick, I just need to figure out what to do. One of the core obstacles that Sam and I face is all of our frequently asked questions and resources and material for Indy Hall is located in one central place that no one goes to. So,
that's a bigger problem.
correct. It's a bigger problem. So what we're capable of doing here, this is actually a unique advantage because this is very specific. It's a very focused thing. And we would be able to direct people to go to a certain place. So is it helpful to have that stuff online? Is it helpful to have?
I think it should be a part, at least for starting out, of summer packet and Hello at Indy
The
Hall.
onboarding.
Because I would actually go to Hello at Indy Hall for finding that information if I was trying to decide whether or not to bring my kid the next day or find out if it's a half day. So I think it's just an issue of like audience. Like am I always remembering to go to Hello and Indy Hall when I'm planning a meetup? Or not. When it comes to bringing another person into the mix, then yeah.
Well, the other thing is I'm working on some sort of overhaul of our website because it doesn't actually look like us anymore. And it's completely static. And I have a whole document of things that it's like, we could adjust this. And I'm thinking, based on this conversation, what could be more useful than what we've had so far is just an FAQ on the main site. Anyone can see it, probably more useful for members, and can have that question of like, I'm a parent, my kid's sick, can I bring them into the space? Or what resources do you have for parents and kids? Or something like that, or both.
You can cross-post the data, right?
Yeah. And that also
exactly.
carries over to like, are there areas that the kids shouldn't? Or is there a particular, is it okay to take a kid into a homeroom if they're having a hard time and like have them color in there where they're like not so easy? Like that kind of stuff is helpful. And knowing that, even if I never brought my kids in that situation, knowing that it's there changes my complete perspective of space. It just really does.
And a lot of those things, a lot of that would be answered by all of you. My honest answer is, I don't know. What are you comfortable with? If your kid is
Well,
having
we
a
need to
meltdown.
open it to the community at large now.
That's why this is the beginning of the conversation.
Right, exactly. And all of you are the people who are here for this conversation. So, yes, absolutely open to the community. But I can't answer that question, so we would look to you all for what have you experienced, what's helpful, and how we accommodate other people that do that too.
And I think bringing people who have kids of different ages, my youngest is 6, right? So I don't have nursing issues anymore. But I do have an almost teenager now. So like that, those issues are very different than what I would have had 5 years ago. Having maybe a range of people give input. I don't know how old your kid is. 3.5. So yeah. Yeah.
Almost out of it.
Almost. Yeah.
And the whole rashy shit coming down the pike.
Hey, I'm counting down right now. I've got one
God.
last 2-year-old.
My oldest is almost a teenager, and let's just say he has more hair product than anyone else in my house.
Woo!
Yeah.
Smelling good. Sorry, I'm making a note about FAQ and stuff in my other document.
Are there any like family restrooms in the building?
There are not.
Oh,
There's one.
Colonial Penn?
There's the one private one.
There's a private one that's
Right.
a handicap.
Okay.
On this floor?
I don't remember if they have. I think they have a changing table, but I could be
I don't think so.
imagining that. I don't know. There's definitely no space even in the women's restroom, like the changing table.
Right. I was curious about that because I think that's one of the.
We have had other.
I'm past that point anyway, but it's just the kind of things I think about and
That's
other
so
parents would ask.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Well, also, because like, I don't think. I mean, I probably wouldn't have a problem changing a diaper on a table like this, but I know other people might be weirded out by that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if
Anywhere-
it's always nice to like say, okay, you know, if you're more comfortable, there is this option.
And and typically what I do is I'll like duck behind a couch or something, but it still feels awkward because he sees weird people. I don't know. Yeah. And the bathrooms don't feel super like it's really hard tile, and they keep them very clean. But it still feels weird to change the bed on the floor if you have to. I mean, I do it. I live in an urban environment. That was one of the things that I learned pretty early on. Having a bike meant it's no place to change your kids back to park. So yeah, we're just gonna make sure there's no needles. Go for it. Yeah, changing tables are a big part of it.
That's a thing.
But honestly, the reality of it is that stuff isn't just about parents, though.
Right.
It helps everyone accept their whole life. Because we have very Victorian ideals of how everyone should be separated, and we as freelancers don't believe that. Like, we believe that you can work longer in life, and that you can start younger, and that there's value in all of that. And so I think it very much fits in with who Indy Hall is, and it's really important. The reason I like the FAQ is it doesn't just put it on the parents to deal with their own shit. It's more about changing, at least for me, it's always more about changing the overall cultural perception of children as something that should be like not seen or not heard. Like, I don't want that to be a part of my life. That's going to be a distraction. They're only a distraction and missing out on the value that you can get from having a multi-generational experience. We did have, there was someone, I think it was Rob, there was like a 10-year-old girl that was in the bathroom and one of the other tenants on the floor freaked out
Oh yeah.
about it.
I remember hearing about this. I can't remember who it was though.
Is it Ed's stuff at Freebooks?
No. But yeah, somebody was like, I can't believe you're letting her be in there by herself. And it was like, she knows what she's doing.
Here in Colonial Penn?
Yeah. So there's a lot of like irrational fears when it comes to women in bathrooms. Just there's like irrational fears of women walking alone at night. And yes, there are attacks that happen and women are more targeted. However, most abuse happens in the home. So yeah, so that might be something that there need to be some collaboration with Colonial Penn on some of these things. Maybe long term, once we kind of know better where our focus is going to be, to get things like a changing table in a handicapped restroom would be fantastic. It's gender neutral and it's separated from the clinic stuff.
And it's got the space because it's a handicapped restroom.
Yeah, and it's also worth asking, checking in with anyone at Colonial Penn, what their protocol is for new parents already. Yeah, because I've never asked. I don't know. And they may have resources available that I'm unaware of.
And are they uncomfortable with kids using the elevators by themselves, no matter what their age? Is that different after hours than it is during the day?
Well, in this case, you can't use the elevator without your.
Well, not after hours. Like, Mealy comes up for Girl Scouts on her own, and the night lady seems fine with that. The night lady often has her own child there doing work and hanging out with her. So her stance might be different from Colonial Penn business people going up and down might not be comfortable with having a 12 or 13-year-old or even like 10-year-old would come alone in the elevator. And that's something that we want to push or not push, I don't know. So that's some of the stuff we can kind of back burner, but probably should be on the radar in terms of kind of opening up Indy Hall to be a little more cross-generational. Yeah.
So flipping to like sillier stuff, because this is all
Hand turkeys.
hand turkeys.
What's the deal?
No, well, so this is really useful, especially on like an administrative view. But thinking more about like it's getting warmer, folks want to do more, kids will be out of school soon. Are there things you want to see that Indy Hall doesn't currently do? I know right now my thing that's totally weird to me that we just haven't had in a while is like nobody goes out and does things together unless it's a happy hour. So it's like we could all go to a museum, we could all go to the zoo. Oh my God, I really want to do a zoo day. Adam, we're doing a zoo day.
That's you. I don't like
I'm going to do a zoo day.
Zoo makes me sad.
We could do aquarium day.
Yeah.
Aquarium's awesome.
Aquarium doesn't
Adam,
make
write
me sad.
things down. Write
For
things
some reason,
down.
when animals are in the water, I'm like, they're happy.
Write things down.
When they're in cages, it's
The
totally
aquarium's
different.
amazing.
Yeah.
They've opened this really cool thing where they can move all over the zoo through these like trapeze things.
Only the tigers can do that.
No,
Right
they
now,
switched the
they're
big
working
cats
on it.
around.
Really?
They're working on it. It's gonna be everything long term.
That's awesome.
Still
It's gonna
Well,
be like you're in a
Sarah,
group.
talk to the other animals about how they feel about tigers visiting their space. Because I feel like some of the other animals are like, not about that idea.
Fucking predator walking through my space.
Appreciate the transparency. Thank you for giving them access.
Write it down.
I've just wrote zoo 100 times.
But zoo, like, yeah, stuff like zoo, aquarium,
Franklin Institute.
Franklin Institute.
I
I'm also
Yeah,
thinking
I
for like
really
littler kids too. There are things that like people could get together to
Please
do.
touch
like
me.
the
Yeah. Like I go to all those places, but
Old
usually
City.
just by myself. So I'd love to just go with some other like-minded people.
have adult conversations.
Yeah,
So I'd just be like, no, we can't have a chocolate ice cream right now. We're gonna go this way.
It's like when we have a kid party, like we have like the adults all sit in the back and they usually drink.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, cheese and mimosas.
I love family-friendly events. I love the idea of doing family-friendly events. What I'd love more is to see some strategy to actually doing that.
Yeah.
Somebody hosting them or being a part of that.
yeah, I mean it's interesting because like from my perspective, like my kids love coming here. And, like, they love the notion of the community and the creativity of it. How to flip that on its head so the community is equally receptive. My kids really like view it as a treat. Like, oh, can we stop and say hi to Timmy on the way home? Literally, like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Like, a question I get asked once a week.
So I think coming from the like non-child side, I think the concern is, and I really hate comparing children to dogs because that's shitty, but it's the same level of concern of, do I have to watch this kid and do I have to be concerned about what's happening with this kid? And most of the time the answer is no. It's like if it's stopping by to see Timmy or whatever, I think it's like, yeah, okay, do I have to watch and be concerned for this person, or will this disturb what I'm trying to do for work? And we already talked about like having different areas that clearly make sense, especially just in how we're laid out, with the exception of Timmy. He's in the wrong spot. That's what we learned. But I can't imagine there being more fuss beyond those two things, which I feel like are both concerns that are easily assuaged.
And I don't think that we should program expecting fuss. We respond to it.
Right. I mean, there may be.
Well, there's already been some, though. Like, please don't turn into a daycare. Like,
People
that's
said that to you?
not going to happen. We were talking about childcare in general, and I was like talking about the fact that I could see having some kind of drop-in daycare that would be closely connected with Indy Hall. And people are like, no, I'm not a daycare. I'm not saying we're going to have a daycare in Indy Hall. I'm saying that as we become more freelancers, the format of daycare does not translate, and then a drop-in daycare here. with that reaction, and it's not like I'm not manipulating the person who really said that. That reaction is just an innate cultural reaction that we have.
Like this could just be a generic.
So figuring out, I mean, whenever I see kids in the hall, I'm like, that's not nice. I don't know how to deal with that. You know, like that's my reaction every time I go somewhere. Like a kid throws a tantrum on the sidewalk. I'm like, yeah, I like it. So it's a little different. I think the other thing would be, I think we should probably, I know I'm always about documentation and whatever, but it being possible to plan have family-friendly events be as much of a part of event planning as like remote. So just mark it if something is family or friendly or not, and have like the standard of what family-friendly means.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You know, so like if we know remote is an option, we know that means Zoom, and we know that means it probably will be recorded, and we know that, you know, we can use Google TV and you're going to need that. Like there's a set of parameters around that. I think for family friendly, it could be the same. It could be like alcohol needs to be declared because not everyone may be comfortable with that. Not that you shouldn't have alcohol, but just it needs to be known when alcohol will start being served, the timing of it. And like, will there be an activity specifically aimed at the children? That should probably be listed there, you know, as well. It doesn't have to be an activity for kids, but if there is one, what is it? When is it starting? Does it have any age limit or a restriction of amount of things that you bring on it? But just, it's, you know, that kind of like explicitly planning. Because the thing is, a lot of times parents aren't going to be the ones planning events unless they're like crazy like me and they get bored doing one thing. So we need like to actually have family friendly events at Indy Hall. You just have to make it like another component of what we do and consider it part of the accessibility factor.
It's a great idea.
Yep.
Totally. And I think I forgot what I was gonna say. Yes.
I'm talking a lot. I
No.
think about this stuff all the time.
I mean, it's useful, and it's, as I said, it's all stuff that like we might be half aware of, or we might be not aware of at all. So it's all useful, and I'm grading Adam's notes. But we're recording this also for that purpose too, like marking this stuff down. So I think things we can do right off the bat, because one of the things that's important to me is that like this is not a meeting of like, cool, what do you think? Let's come up with ideas and let's put them away for a while. We can get a nursing symbolism thing. Yeah. For one of the phone rooms, just make that the thing. We could probably put a cubby in there. I say cubby only because that way it's open so that stuff doesn't get cluttery in there. But if that doesn't work, we'll figure out something else. I want to get started on the website project pretty soon because that's the thing I've been like tinkering with and then have run up on my skill level and now I'm done. So the FAQ thing absolutely can happen, and I can even do one that will live in WordPress until we have a better website for that to live in. Because we had an FAQ for moving, and I think it was far more effective than the current system of like, try and find it that we do now. And then I think as far as events go, Indy Hall doesn't actually plan that many events. I don't think we're going to be doing very many art shows. Because it just seems like that's what's happening.
Like we did the thing up at Liberty Lands a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Like
we
I
do
think
that once a year, so that's the kind of we have art shows, town halls, and
show and tell.
Picnic. Yeah, and then like show and tell, lunch and learns. Maybe those things are on there every day. But in terms of community-wide events,
we don't plan that much.
A couple dozen.
So I think the simplest thing to do is, if we're talking about something that's going to be family friendly, like I'm going to do it. I'm in a family friendly improv show that just started, and it's kosher for kids. And in our last, well, I wasn't the last show, but the first show, a bunch of like toddlers ran up on stage, and like we just played with them.
That sounds kind of amazing.
It was really, really fun. Turns out they're not big yes anders, but like,
Especially if they just learn the word no. No.
But yeah, which was a total surprise, and I loved it. But like, if we planned an outing to like, let's go see Sam and Neil in this dopey, goofy show where they'll probably play chairs or something like that, and then like figure out with an event to start with what sort of symbolism is going to make it clear, like, this is family friendly, this is for all ages, this is also going to be fun for adults too. Like,
too much to do like the other colors.
I know, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Like, because you have the remote color and then they're trying to like splice it together, which is
I know,
an
it's
interesting candy cane combo, but it's okay.
absolutely. I mean,
But
definitely.
that would be one good start.
And but it also does require you to use the event calendar as we have it. A lot of people have it as like integrated in their calendar, so my GCal doesn't show that for events here.
Does it show like any other kind of tags though, like,
See,
in the description?
I'll show you
I
what it
can
looks
play with
like. It just shows, like the green one is Indy Hall, but it doesn't have granularity into.
If you tap on that though, does it have like no, it doesn't really give a description.
It doesn't, but we can have that be part of the written description.
I mean, it says
really
Indy Hall
easily.
Wellness.
Yeah, or
There's
we
a
can
place
have it.
to place. There's a place to put the description. Few people actually do. So it's possible that you're looking at something in somebody else's name.
Or maybe even just putting in the title, like FF, family friendly,
Well, you have. I just.
Just have a hashtag.
as a start. Yeah.
Make it actually a hashtag because then people remember to use the exact same terminology every time.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then we can use the same thing on group posts as well.
Yeah, the one for here for this meeting says it's tagged twice at Indy Hall and also outside of Indy Hall. But you have to.
So it does tag it.
But you have to click in to look at it as opposed to like looking at it on the calendar.
Yeah. It's not going to be as granular as looking at it on the website.
But yes, we can very easily add a kid-friendly calendar. And I'm curious if there's just like very simple things you can do just to get Indy Hall members' kids together that are like close to the same
I'd
age.
like to explore Old City a little bit more because we never do any of the like street stuff that everyone needs to travel with.
Yeah.
Like that's a super easy start.
The things we leave town for.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 2, 4, and 8. So I'm kind of this like weird sort of gap.
Mhm.
We're freelancing. Yeah, but like Independence Hall or like Old City does all kinds of events in the summer, and even just knowing ahead of time what some of those are. And the only thing about being a parent is a lot of times I need more than like a week's notice.
Right.
And I also need to know that it's okay to opt out like the day of. Just be like, I'm so sorry. Like, there's no diaper and nothing is happening. We're stuck home. Having flexibility. But yeah, it's the like last minute like, oh, let's all go to a happy hour at like 1 p.m. Like, that's almost never gonna happen for me.
Cool. Yeah. So I want to respect everyone's time because that's what we do. So we're getting close to 1. I think next step, we'll get a sign. Like I said, I'll start working on the FAQ thing so it's just there already. And I think we'll post a recap to GroupBuzz of like, here's what we talked about, here's what's next. If you guys like the Parents Don't Understand channel, we can have that be a basis for that. If you want something a little bit different, I'm up for whatever. Because this has been really great. Thank you for being so thoughtful and taking your time and sharing a lot. No, it's so great. Don't do
I'm
that.
Sorry, I feel like it's a conversation. I'm trying not to do that.
Yeah, and that way we can rope in all of the parents that spoke to me about like,
Amazon compliance sites.
sweet, that's super, super simple. But yeah, we'll rope in all the other parents who, for various reasons, couldn't be here, share the recording, and as I said, this is the beginning of the conversation, so maybe we'll start those things and then chat on Slack, maybe check back in person to see how things are going. If something's not reading right to you or some things doesn't make sense and you're like, come on, dum-dum, like you can say, come on, dum-dum, because I don't know. And I need that feedback. Yeah, thank you so much, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you
Thanks
for doing
organizing,
this.
Sam,
Yeah.
and posting lots of reminders. That's
I'm going to post the notes that I took in general, and we'll put a link also.
Cool.
For recap stuff. But so everybody sees it, it'll just be in general, and anybody else can peruse it.
Great.
Thank you.
And put a tag to the Parents Who Understand channel, because I don't think a lot of folks are in that,
I
since it was
know
started
that,
a little
so
while
that's,
ago.
I don't know what that is. Tell me more.
I saw
Troy
that.
made it when his wife had his baby, who is now
Yeah.
a year old.
I saw that in the
outrageous.
list,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I didn't.
Yep.
I was actually looking at something like that. Because we have a parent channel over at
I did
Artweb,
not
which
even
is
know
really
that.
cool.
Huh?
I would have been in that a year ago.
Yeah. Well,
I missed that one.
Yeah, I thought it, like I saw it in the list and I thought it was not that, just because I guess of a jokey title or something. So,
yeah, it might be the title. Maybe I assumed it was all Will Smith conversation.
I wasn't in it for a while, but I saw that it was just Neil being like, here's a resource I found. Here's a resource. Because Neil is the
He
best.
does that a lot in a lot of channels. I think that's the other thing.